I came.
Wow. What timing. Hello, JB. I actually don't know if all my mods are gonna work. Like for OBS, because I had to reset my Windows, but we'll find out.
Good.
Hello. Welcome.
That's
Oh my.
right, you meant tomorrow learn to laugh.
Hey, I edited the post. Thank you for your points, and I guess we're doing a transatlantic flight. Alright. I know what we're doing over Thanksgiving break now.
Origin 431, hi Origin 431, love how learn.
How you doing? Why? Hold on, let me just... There we go. No, not that one. Nope. Yeah, that'll work. Alright. Let me click on the right thing. I have to set my Stream Deck? Is that the thing? The little box with the buttons?
At work, Origin 431, love.
Nice. Oh, nice. I'm in the SAS avatar. I was just testing, I promise. Okay, I'll change it back. Hold on. I was just testing, I promise.
Learn, we have places to be on Thanksgiving. Make sure to fly fast.
Well, I meant like the day after, so like what, Black Friday or something like that? I don't know. Also, my mouth moves? Oh. Cool, so it's like Live, except better. Alright. Works for me. Oh, I guess I'll open requests. I have not played this game in so long. This is gonna be so bad. The, video I made, took me 2 tries, because the first time I recorded it, I had my mouse in the middle of the screen, and that almost killed me. So, I guess I'll pick something easy? My game doesn't crash? I did get the game crash 3 times already, so... Something easy. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, I'll just leave it on whenever it's on. Alright, if anything needs changed, let me know. 'Cause I can't see. Can't see what you see. And I just woke up. I don't have anywhere to be on Thanksgiving. Actually, I think on actual Thanksgiving, I'm probably gonna go for a hike or something and get out of the house. Look at how difficult this map is. This is what you guys waited for, right? Also, if I drop bitrate or something, tell me please, and I'll figure something out. Oh, I see. I get it now, I get it. It probably won't be on that sim, but I do have the new sim installed. And as long as it doesn't bug out like it has been, we'll definitely do it then. Vatsun's just not compatible yet with the new one. Oh, I can spin the things around. Well, I only have school tomorrow morning, and then I'm off for the rest
I
of the week.
remember none of the Beat Saber songs, mostly because you play the Pew Pew Guns one more often than the last.
According to my stats, I think I missed.
Well, I know one you want to play.
What's that? Also, is everything okay? Audio, bitrate? Alright, I will investigate. I wish that would give me the song name. Wait. I assume the camera's still there. Also, the spinny one, the washing machine one, looks... It looks so broken in the third person. Okay. Chat requests. Oh, nice. I didn't know this was mapped. Heck yeah. What? What is this environment? What?
You got me checking my mirror, you make me feel like I'm on the run. Where'd you hide the gun? The kitchen knife in your hand. Are you the poison? Are you the cure? I'm not so sure.
How long has it been since you last played? Or do you want to
2 years. Boy, could you tell?
You cut me off from my friends, you cut me off from my family. I'm in misery.
Actually, a little bit over 2 years.
I see the writing is on the wall.
I think my last one was like August. Yeah, August 2022. Oh, I'm gonna die. Oh, okay. Okay, good. It's not actually doing that. What frickin'... What map is that? I wish the other environments worked with, like the new ones. I wish they worked with the old maps.
Is new environment, yes.
Nice. I like it. Disable safe mode? I don't know what that means.
I'm sick and tired of feeling my face on fire when you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like.
Nice.
Is it cold in here?
Oh, that's fun, dude.
Big head count.
Hi, Diamond. How you doing?
Did you ever think for a second I'm only human too? You have no perception of all the struggles that I have
That's right.
been through. Listening to the nothingness I'm hearing while I watch your lips move. If you really knew me, you'd think twice about creating my truth.
I'm well. I've been screen through.
I'm sick and tired of feeling my face on fire when you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like.
I gotta lower chat a little bit so I can see how goes the pain. Oh, that's not bad. So far.
You are on the outside, always looking in, but never asking questions. Could it be that you won't understand that we're both born of innocence? Empty conversations, we know nothing of each other's solitude. You don't know the reasons that made me, and I don't know you. I'm sick and tired of feeling my faith expire in the lies we keep on telling ourselves. You don't know what it's like to lay. No, you don't know what it's like to
It's hard not to move my head. No head banging allowed. Forget I can't do that in this game because it throws my vision off.
You don't know what it's like
Nice. I see requests. Oh, really? They work on Quest now? Like, you know, not with the link table. Obviously they work on Quest, but... Interesting.
A pen.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. I usually play this this one. What is it? This spooky environment, but based on the last one, I'm gonna leave it off. Hopefully Technicolor doesn't lag my stream too much. Oh, that was a laziness. Whatever. So, Origin, do you take commissions? Because these are great. These are so good. And they don't kill me. What did I say? Origin map piece. According to the game, at least. If you guys can't hear me, I'll turn the game down. Nice. All the emotes look
Sings note, sell one dance, sings note, sell one dance, sings note, sell one dance, sings note. Game is tad loud compared to
game is a little loud. Okay, actually, you know what? I'll just turn it down in here.
What? What did you say? I'm joking. I can hear you fine.
Alright, I'll turn the volume down to like that. How's that? Tell me if this is better. It's my... Oh my god. Better? Well, I know it's the menu music, so it doesn't really count, right? Just let me know. Where's the upvote button? Maybe it's on the pause menu or something. Okay. Hey. Ghost Squad. Oh, okay. Download? Do I not have this? No, I have this. Hold on. Game, don't start with me. We just got off on good terms. Don't. Why is it lagging the scroll thing? Whatever. Yeah, there it is. Alright. A chill map.
Lone Parrot. Why you not searching well?
Searching? Alright, I'll have to look. Look, I don't know. Is this a new thing with the game where the notes seem to spawn right on top of me?
You moron.
Well, I don't know. I have the note jump on the farthest setting, but they still seem to be like right on top of me. I know it's modded, so. Solo time. Nice. Volume's better? Are they better? Also, if you don't like those sabers, I can change them.
Best Buy Warzone.
Hey! No. I don't want... Why would I ruin my chances of... Alright, skip this. I don't know. What is happening with my request queue? Why is it borked? What? What? Hold on. Just a moment.
Lone Parrot, Lone Parrot, Lone Parrot.
Since I'm here, let me just turn my volume up. I think I have... Okay, yeah, I have a limiter on it. That is my official sound test. Just making sounds. Okay, right. Oculus mode. JB, your ghost mode... Ghosty map. It broke it. Actually, I think it was me going back and changing settings, but don't know. Come on. Come on, game. Please. Game. Thank you.
Soon may the Lone Paw come to bring us memes and spins and stuff.
I don't know. Can I actually spin from here? There's still a bookcase here that hasn't changed. I hear the game. I think it died.
Lolthedia 33 laughs so
Nope.
one giggle.
Alright. Skip. Nice. Okay, now it seems to be happy. Cool. I don't know, that was weird. I don't... Also, I can switch that camera around to facing forward, but I think it looks better this other way. Excuse me? This is not the spooky map.
Once was a ship that put to sea, and the name of that ship was the Billy O' Tea. The winds blew harder, ploughed it down. Blow me, bully boys, blow. She had not been 2 weeks from shore, but down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. She had not been 2 weeks from shore, but down on her a right whale bore. The captain
Our volume's better.
he'd take that whale in tow. Before the boat had hit the water, the whale's tail came up and caught her hands to the side. Harpooned and fought her, and she dived down below.
Volume down.
Nice. What? I missed. Nice. Stop hitting the mic.
Oh, wow. I have you on desktop and mobile, and somehow it's
Nice.
actually synced. That's wild, Lone the Laugh.
What are the chances? Okay, yeah, I had it overwritten, but I don't know. Oh boy. Which... Here, let me download it. Which version? The regular one? Or this one? I don't know what poodles. What does poodles mean?
Should be regular.
Regular. What is the... Hold on, let me see. Okay. We'll do that one. I think the other one is just like long...
No clue.
Long strings of notes.
One knock at the door and then we both know how to score.
Oh, that's cool.
You can't win if you white flags out when the war begins. Aiming so high, it's ringing so low. Trying to catch fire, but feeling so cold. Holding inside and hope it won't show. I'm saying it's not, but inside I know. Today's gonna be the day you know this. 'Cause I'm tired of explaining what the joke is. This is what you asked for. Heavy is the crowd. Fire in the sunrise. Ashes raining down.
I can't even look at it.
What it's become, outnumbered 10 to 1. Back then should have bit your tongue, 'cause there's no turning back. This path once it's begun, you're already on that list. Say you don't want what you can't resist. Waving that sword when the pen won't miss. Watch it all falling apart like this. This is what you asked for. Heavy is the crowd. Fire in the sunrise. Ashes raining down. Try to hold it in, but it keeps bleeding out.
I heard one of the new songs the other day. I was like, man, this sounds a lot like the other One of the old ones. Stop yelling at me. It's the same as shut up when I'm talking to you. Oh, I was expecting a death blow. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, I'll just sit down on the floor, that's cool. Nice. Hey, that's mine. Give me that. Why is there no upvote anymore?
Such a
I'm
fun
just
map.
kidding. Wow, this one has this one has rating. Okay, let's see if 2 years of not playing this map has improved it. No, the answer to my earlier question is no.
You're the king.
And I'm like so scared to hit my desk that I'm like, I don't want to do full swings. Come on. I already failed for this time. Come on. Come on, Tracking, keep up with me here. fighting with the tracking the whole time. Okay.
You know I had to do it to you once. Lol.
Yeah, I know.
Good.
Okay. Okay. Small hydration required.
Take wall nap.
Thank you. I will.
Grew up in a small town, and when the rain would fall down, I just stare out my window, dreaming of what could be. And if I'd end up happy, I would pray, trying hard to reach out, but when I tried to speak out, felt like no one could hear me. Wanted to belong here, but something felt so wrong here. So I pray I could break up.
Meanwhile, take the obvious left and get just to the left.
I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to
Ah, okay. No problem.
fly. I'll do what it takes till I touch the sky. And I'll make a wish, take a chance, make a change, and break away. Out of the darkness and into the sun. But I won't forget all the ones that I love. I'll take a risk, take a chance, make a change, and break away. Wanna feel the warm breeze, sleep under a palm tree, feel the rush of the ocean. Get on board a fast train, travel on a jet plane, far away, and break away. I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. I'll do what it takes till I touch the sky. And I'll make a wish, take a chance, make a change, and break away. Out of the darkness and into the sun. I won't forget all the ones that I love. I gotta take a risk, take a chance, make a change, and break away. Buildings with 100 floors, swinging on revolving doors. Maybe I don't know where they'll take me, but gotta keep moving on, fly away, break away. I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. Oh, it's not easy to tell you goodbye. Gotta take a risk, take a chance, make a change, and break away. Out of the darkness and into the sun. But I won't forget the place I come from. I gotta take a risk, take a chance, make a change, and break
Hey, how you doing?
away.
So, since you're new to me streaming this game, if you do !B Saber, it will either give you a link to a video, or you can just scroll down. In the About section, there'll be a little box that says, like, I don't know, Beat Saber or something, I don't know. But if you click on that, you can search on the top for a song name, click the copy the top rated one, which should be at the top of the list, and then just chuck that in the queue. That's how it works. Ah, yes. This wall map. Hold on, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Never mind. He's back. I won't come back to it. I am already lagging. We'll just give it a second to load all 124,000 of these walls. Alright, goodbye bitrate. If I'm gonna drop frames, it's gonna be now. If my game doesn't immediately crash. Okay, no, we're good. So many walls. Oh, sneaky hiding those on the other side of that. Sweat dripping down my face into my mouth. Oh, my... the lag. Oh, why? Wall maps didn't used to lag. I don't know. I haven't changed anything. To be fair, this one's pretty, like, intensive? PC intensive? It's like nice and smooth on my end, and then like. Oh my! I'm swinging for those. Like this part's okay, but then as soon as it goes into like some parts of the song, it just tanks. Maybe because I don't have transparent walls on? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's loading little, like, shimmering textures and all those, so I'm gonna say that's the issue. Oh my god. My eyes. So, did I drop any frames? Nice. Alright, hold on one second. Hold on, I have a reason for what I'm doing. Just wait. Just wait. Trust me. Just wait. It fits better. So we don't have that issue again. I'm just gonna move the camera up a tiny bit. Oh, there is a search bar. Alright, JB, you were right. Alright. Time for my arms to die.
Loan GPU did you have?
1070 Ti? It's like a 12 gig. I said you were right. Yeah, 1070 Ti, baby. No missing. What? Must move arms faster. I always miss that part. Arms recover, please. All right. Okay, I'll change back. Alright. I'm not dropping frames, am I? No, I'm good. Okay. Just making sure.
Can you hear, it's you and me forever.
Yes, I could use a relaxing map after the last one. Not expecting it to guitar solo. Nice. Should I be scared of JB's requests? I missed 100? Okay, you say so, game. More wall map. Okay, just gonna turn that off. Heck yeah. Wall maps and light shows, those are the ones I like. I mean, the other maps are good too. I'm just saying, like, if I had to play only one type. This kind. Is there a way to turn transparent walls for what I see? I know I can do it for the cameras, but... I know it used to be a mod, but I was just decapitated by a wall. How rude. Oh my god. Nice. And notes. Why are you not on Expert Plus? No. Coming after your score, JB. I don't care what it takes. I'm already not going to beat your score. I've missed 2 blocks. Never mind. You can have it.
Lol. Expert Plus for nothing. Lol, media 33 laugh, so 1 giggle.
Yeah, I don't know why it was on Expert. That's right. Yeah, it's possible like the last time I played it on Expert. I don't know why though, this one's not too bad. Okay, that was a lead. That miss was my fault. I'll admit it. I'll admit it.
That might not happen now at the time, maybe?
No, I think it would be, that's possible, but I think they would have to re-uploaded it, so it would have been a different version. Or, actually, you know what it was? I bet the last map only had an expert. So, it just defaults, that's what it was. I bet that's what it was. So it just goes back and it's like, oh, you're playing at expert level, okay.
I don't know then. Maybe. Fadia33 confused.
Why does it keep playing the same one? This is fine. It starts with it starts with broken sound as it lags. Ooh, fancy. Fancy.
It starts with
Aww. It's because I didn't pick this hand up. Hello, rings. Goodbye, rings. Hello again. I didn't even try to sing for that. Jeez. Like, my brain sees cube and goes, move your arm, and my arm just... eh. Oh my god, these resets. Arm on strike, yeah. Arm has left the chat. Wait, I don't actually want to go get water because I don't know. I don't trust it. I've been jump scared many times by this game. Okay. What did I click? Nothing. Okay. Good. I'm drenched in sweat, but it's fine. Ah. I gotta find some like better head face shield solution because this leather one is garbage. It has little vents, but they don't do anything. Nice. Screw it. We'll change avatars for this one. I love listening to the song's lag as it renders. Alright. Chat moderation? Oh.
Lol. The lag bits.
Yeah, I know, they're great. Speed.
Sings note cell one dance. Sings note cell one dance. Sings note cell one dance. Sings note cell one giggle.
Why does it read emotes?
Sings note video 33 dance. Sings note video 33 dance. Sings note video 33 dance. Sings note.
I'm trying to watch the video. And Sari would be happy. What? Was that Spider-Man? This is pretty much me. Pretty nice, but I listen to metal music. I wish I could actually put my hands on my head and do it, but it'll lose tracking as soon as I go above my head. Oh my god. Oh, I missed so many. Nice. Yes. Yeah, right. Is you gonna paint? Good leg. Axel, no. I will bonk you. No comments from you. Time to break my legs. Do not stand in front of me. What are you doing?
Oh, well.
Oh. How dare. Alright. Breaking legs time. Apparently breaking my headset as I punch myself with the controller.
When I was 6 years old, I broke my leg. My brother and his friends broke my leg. Tasted the sweet perfume on the mountain grass I rode down. I was younger then. Take me back to when I broke my leg, found my heart, broke it, made friends and lost them through the years. And I've not seen the boring fields in so long. I know I broke my leg, but I can't wait to go home. I'm on my way, driving at 90 down the road. Broke my leg. To tiny dancer and that's the way you make me feel. It's real.
Me feel is true.
It's real. Me feel. It's real. Me feel. It's real. 15 years old, broke my leg.
Oh, jeez.
Running from the law through the backfields and broke my leg. I'm on my way, driving at 90 down the country.
Wow, those are walls.
Singing to tiny dancer and that's the way you make me feel. And it's real when we watch the sunset over the castle on the hill. Over the castle on the hill. Over the castle. Oh, my leg.
You're welcome.
I do have to go soon, so might I request mine next?
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
No problem. I would have done it this evening, but I was like, nah, then like JB can't watch because they're sleeping. Big sleeping. Professional sleeper mode. Oh, and not to mention, I had to be up at 5 tomorrow morning for school, so... Here we go. Hello, Bandu. What is happening? I am not liable or responsible for bonking anybody who walks into this room. I can't hear you. I was swinging for those. What the heck? That's right. That's right. What did you say? No, don't give me peach ring. What things? The what? Is she here? Go look for her. I have no idea where all that stuff is.
With that, I gotta go.
Say what?
I take my uppies and leave. Sil 1 up, Sil 1 yay, Thedia 33 heart, Sylvan heart.
No problem. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the requests. Let me get you
Love
these
you
requests.
guys. Enjoy Saber.
Big Zebra mode. What's this? Oh. That's fine. Oh my god! What are those class? No. I refuse to bow. You can't make me.
I said, give enemies XXJBXG1.
Well, unless I've forgotten, I'm surprised this map doesn't make you do squats under walls. Like, it just seems like appropriate to do squats for those sections, but you know. Why do I hear a pressure washer outside? I see. I didn't miss that many. What? A new high score but a C? What? I don't get it. Where is search bar? Oh, here. Okay. Right. Why is the search? Whatever. It's down way at the bottom. Spinny time. Spin. Ah. Oh. Wow. Oh, that's cool. Make like shapes with the trails. Nice. Alright. Hamster wheel mode complete. I don't know what half these maps are.
Stash, come stomp me flat. I'm going to fuck your dad. Coming high into the morning.
What? Nice. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's an anime map.
So y'all call these things chips?
That one I remember is Pain and Suffering. Ah, this
One
one's not
day,
bad.
he met an old lady in a dark corner of a tavern. She had
Which
an
one's
apple.
the ranked one?
Eat this apple, she said. Eat this apple and you will get rid of all the problems you will have with girls. And so he did. He waited.
Apparently it's not
He
ranked
waited
anymore.
for the apple to take effect. But then he felt there was some...
Screw it, we're playing it.
Once upon a time, there was a fine young man traveling the 7 seas. He was young, he was wild, and sometimes a bit impatient with the girls. One day, he met an old lady in a dark corner of a tavern. She had an apple. Eat this apple, she said. Eat this apple and you will get rid of all the problems you will have with girls. And so he did. He waited. He waited for the apple to take effect. But then he felt there was something terribly wrong. He stumbled. He tried not to fall, but the pain was unimaginable. And then his stick fell off. His stick fell off. His stick fell off.
I get it. We get it. We get it. We've said it so many times. No. No.
Devastated and deprived of his manhood, he lost the will to carry on. But then, he heard an ancient legend about a mystic animal which was said to hold the cure for his problem. The only thing he needed to do was to touch the horn of the... Gosh, is my dick long unicorn. He instantly set sail, went to Moon Island, found the beast, and after a long and furious battle, finally touched its horn. The curing process started immediately. In fact, the growth was so immense that from that moment on he was known as the Three-Legged Pirate. He sailed back to the tavern, searched for the old lady, and then... they fucked all night.
What a tale.
They fucked all night.
Time to go back to the island. I gotta get a better freaking face or a head strap, man. Puts all the weight, like, right here, right, or is it like right here on my head? Definitely not painful or anything. How long have we been going? Let's see. 3 seconds. Hour and a half. Okay. Hour and a half to go then. Well, unless more requests get put in, I'm just gonna keep playing my stuff. Feel free. Said break my whole room. No. Alright, which one is the one that... This is the old one? Okay, yeah, this is the right one. It's pretty sad that I don't have a high score on my own map. I am, yes. Very much. I just wish I could be better at it, but I guess it was, I mean, big lazy mode for 2 years. What do I expect, right? I said, what do I expect after 2 years of not playing? And I said, yes, I am enjoying, except that I suck right now. You should be able to hear me okay. I don't know why it's not cooperating. What is happening outside? Ah! I just hear like my window is being pressure washed. I don't know. These colors are way too close. No. Nope. Ah. Hello, welcome. Thank you for the, How is your name like that? Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. What is that?
Colon 3. Just call him Car Kappa. Karu.
Car? Beep beep? No, no, I'm sorry. I had to do it. I had to do it. JB made me do it.
Twilight falls on empty streets. I've seen it all, the days repeat. 1,000 nights of restless sleep. I'm losing touch with everything. So call it off.
What if I don't believe that?
You can't save me now. There's nothing left of me to give. Now I'm begging you to slow down. Let me be alone now. I should be the last thing on your mind. It's been a long time coming and I'm still here running from everything. Yeah, you can find me in the street lights, driving after midnight. Funny how the time flies when I'm gone. And by the time you wonder, I'll be 6 feet under, so stay away. I had my doubts would come to this, so just pretend I
Absolutely
don't
not.
exist.
Look at all those cake emotes. No way.
You did your best to let this go. I hate to say I told you so. So call it off. You can't save me now. There's nothing left of me to give. So save your breath or suffocate the sea. And I can't bring you down with me.
I just woke up and went straight to my computer. I should have eaten breakfast. Yeah. Uh-huh. Ah, yes, the pain and suffering now. Absolutely not. Let go of my finger. Wow. That's it. That's it. You get this one instead. Do not stand in front of me. I told you I'm gonna hit you if you're too close. Well, I guess also like JB, I'm innocent. Just ignore this current song.
Sorry, what?
Well, if you're innocent, this song will prove mine, right? Right? You're fine. Why is this? Why? Ow. Hold on. I gotta defog my face for a second.
Don't look at us. We did not request it.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, my face. Okay, that's fine. Oh. Hold on. Where's the... Yep, this one. Right. Okay, my favorite Sleep Token song. Nice. 115 upvotes. I'm gonna assume that's good. No, anything but that. There we go. Sleep Token's alright. This one's like the only one I really like of them. But alright.
We were
I promise, the song gets better. I promise. It's just slow at the beginning. Which is most Sleep Token songs, to be fair. Thank you for just driving by at Mount Jesus with your no muffler car. Nice. No crap. Why do I have 3 versions of this? Oh, that's weird. This search, I can search, but this search only shows the customs. This one blends all of them. Okay, whatever.
Just concede and give in to your inner demons again.
Hold on. Yeah, that's fine. What? Whoa. That looks super cool.
It's cold now, 6 feet down. I've been waiting on a signal from you.
Man, how are people doing this stuff?
Candles burn, but nothing works. I'm just trapped inside a memory. The only thing that's left in my soul.
Oh, we floating now.
I think that you know. And now I'm lost in the empty. Why can't you feel me? Does it seem like I'm getting through? Now I patiently wait since the day that you killed me. Waiting on a signal from you. A signal from you. I'm still waiting on a signal from you. A signal from you.
Nice. I do love noodle maps.
A snake snatching, bushwhacking adventure.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Damn jungle juice.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like do I try it?
Map has not aged well.
A snake snatching, bushwhacking adventure.
Okay, I will investigate.
An unfathomable, incredible, strange journey.
Did no Fitbit what Jackie Matt also might have done the lights.
The misses are my fault because I'm leading. What I remember, this map is pretty ridiculous, but I might be remembering something else. This isn't that bad. Why? Why the diagonals? Alright. That's enough. Goodbye. mean, I still have the old rustic version of this. And I know the new one's better, but
Throwing flashbang.
no flashbang. Wonder if this one's still decent.
Don't let the bass get you.
Switch.
Really? I do all of that and then miss the last one. Right, okay.
Don't let the bass get you.
What? Why miss? Where?
Don't let the bass get you. Don't let the bass
Switch.
If you don't hold that pattern through there, you're dead.
Don't let the bass get you.
Kind of like, hold on. This one. I can do part of it, but not the end. Because the end is vibro. Well, I used to be able to do part of it up until the end. We'll see. Nope. Not today. No final boss. No. Look. I can scroll or I can just hit randomize.
Left 4 Dead.
Why?
Always knew that love was blind, but much to my surprise, the veil over my eyes was all alright. I can see no looking back, the water in the cracks, I'm sinking into black, it was all alright. I got every stone you throw, you got me feeling low, there's nowhere left to go, now I say the lies. All the signs I missed led me straight to this, everything I ever wanted, but you don't exist. Now I can't forget all that I
Being hungry doesn't help. Absolutely not. No melancholia. No. No. Sure. I wanted to do 3 hours, but I don't know if that's happening.
To the club goes.
And I tell you what, the tracking on this frickin' headset is atrocious. Half the blocks I swing for, it doesn't even track. I might see if I can set the old headset back up again. Because not only does it have a wider field of view, so I can actually see more than this. It is also much better tracking. Like those crossovers, it's not tracking my left hand. Or if it is, the haptic's not going off. What? 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 Why are you poking me? Why is my bitrate tanking? Alright. Move. Move. I'm hungry. We're gonna do like 1 or 2 more maps and then I'm done. That'll be close enough to 3 hours. And I don't know why it's tanking the quality, I'm sorry. I don't know why. Actually, fuck's sake. Am I tall enough to do this map? I don't know. So bad. Why? Wow, that went right through my face. My hands were up. Oh my god, I can't see. Alright, maybe one more. Game doesn't crash. I do want to keep playing, but I'm like so hungry I can't focus on anything else. Sounds like that guy needs to go back to accident avoidance training. If that's his reaction to a crashing airplane. Alright. Take these straps off my arms. Let me investigate and see if there's anybody alive. Let's see. Let us see. That's very... nobody I know. Okay, let's check one more place. Let's check. Thank you, yeah, I wanted to hear myself. Let's see. I'm just gonna randomly pick somebody off this list that has... So I just got accepted to a Twitch team, so we're just gonna pick somebody randomly off this list. And, German. I don't speak German. Alright, let's rate this person. No idea who this person is. We're playing, was it War Thunder? So, yeah. Okay. I played that game a little bit. Let's go see what this person's about in the meet. I'm sorry. If you have any emotes, please feel free to use them. They don't have to be mine. It can be anybody's emotes. Game... Shut up. In the meantime, y'all take it easy. I will probably be back later this week. I gotta do that transatlantic flight, so... yeah, we're gonna do that. And yeah, y'all take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Don't work too hard. Peace out.